презентации нет.
Окей, понял. Сейчас делаю.
Hello, everybody. So we are waiting 2 minutes until more people will join us. Okay, I think we will start. Before we will start, I would like to ask you ask the questions during the presentation, because we found that we have some delay and it could happen that we disconnect before I will read your question. So please prepare FAQ before we will end. So today we'll talk about cloud migration, and we don't only will talk about the strategy, we also will talk about why it's needed and what challenges could you have during this process. It will be very interesting to know why you came here. So what is your interest? Do you already try migrate? What was your experience, or you just wanted and you want to know what to wait from it. So if you can leave some comments, I will appreciate, just for me to get some feedback. Yeah, few words about me. I have worked with the clouds more than 6 years. Mostly I have experience with AWS, but also work with other common clouds like Google or Azure from Microsoft. Yeah, and we will start from why you need to move to cloud. There are a few benefits, and we will talk about the most important one. So let's start from cost saving. When you have your own server, I think you know that you need to pay money for equipment, you need to pay money for electricity, for employee who will manage all the stuff. So of course, this cost will be saved from your side. In other case, you need to pay for services that you use. About it, we had a previous workshop where I have talked about cost optimization. So also you can check it after you will move to the cloud. Scalability. It means that when you understand that you will have more people, for example, from your marketing plan, yeah, and you need to scale your capacity of your application. With cloud, it just 2 clicks, I don't know, 4 clicks. It's not really a huge work, but when it's your local machine or like your local servers, You need to find the equipment. You need to spend some time for configuration. It's quite different timeline. Flexibility. Few weeks ago, I have heard interview with one of the biggest Ukrainian bank founder, and now they have problem with electricity. And of course, when you have money and your bank application doesn't work, it lead you to the stress, and you don't want to have it. So actually, their solution was move part of the servers to the cloud. In this case, it will guarantee them flexibility, so they are not dependent on the electricity, and the users can get access to the application in any time. So it's one of the case. Disaster recovery. Of course, any server depends on location, and if something happened with location where you are responsible for it, and you need to think about plan what you will do in this situation. With cloud, you don't have this problem because actually vendor take responsibility for it. And improve security. What I mean by it, it's most of the vendor provide you some services which can help you with security, and they have full team for it, they have support for it. Of course, you can do it on your side, but get full-time security team, it could be quite costly. So next one is great that we have so many benefits, but what about challenge? In other cases, it could be a quick process, and we will not talk about it. So let's see what we could have here. So first of all, it's lack of strategy, and about strategies we will talk a little bit later. The more important, if you need to understand why you are doing it and what to expect finally, because if you don't know your expectation, you will not satisfy with the result. Cost management. So now you have, I don't know, a few bills for electricity for employee, and with cloud you will have another service which will gather you all the analytic. You need to understand which analytic to check, and this could be a little bit complicated. Also, you need to understand KPI. So what budget you expect to spend for the cloud, because it's not fixed. So from month to month it could be changed. Data security and compliance. Of course, in one hand, cloud provide you some security services. In other hand, you have shared responsibility between a cloud provider and between you. So cloud provider take responsibility for the security of hardware, but everything that belongs to the data that you store, this responsibility is on your shoulder. So you need anyway think about it. And vendor lock-in. By it, I mean that if you select some vendor, for example, AWS, in most cases, it means that you will go with this vendor. To feel all benefits of cloud, you need to use specific services, which is not very easy to move from, for example, AWS to Azure. And from Azure, for example, for AWS. Of course, some of them could, some of them no. So in most cases, you will lock in. And before you will do your migration, you need to have a plan. It's partly connected to the strategy. So you need to have a checklist, which resources you have, and how many users will use your application, so on. So let's go through this checklist one by one. So first one is you need to get list of all your storage devices, databases, applications. So you need to understand what actually you have in your architecture. Next one is evaluate application performance. By it, I mean that you need to understand what CPU usage you will have, how big will be the storage, what else, network usage. All this belong to item 2. Next one is determine data requirement. So your application generates some data. You need to understand how many data generated, like in minutes, second, day, because based on it, you will choose some plan on the cloud. Next one is compliance and security. So, for example, you have healthcare application. We work mostly with healthcare, and of course, you need to understand you need to understand which cloud provider select based on compliance. Does it HIPAA for USA or does it GDPR for US? For Europe. It could be some other compliance based on your business. So you need to understand which compliance you have, because based on that, some vendors will provide this certificates of compliance. Some will not. Next one is the tech application dependencies. So you can use some third-party API, for example, a payment system, or I don't know, authorization, maybe, anything. So you also need to have this list, because in case you will have a restructurization of your architecture, you will need to count this connection. Evaluate cost. So you need to calculate how many costs you already spent, and when you will understand which service you want to go, you can compare. Okay, from cost efficiency, does it make sense or no? And also you can understand from what to expect next month when you will get invoice. Next one is identify the right cloud platform. I'm a little bit already covered. Again, if you are talking about healthcare, for example, if you take AWS, they even provide some template for HIPAA compliance. All these services are GDPR compliance. If we are talking about Azure, Azure have even some specific services like Azure Healthcare Bot or Azure Cognitive Services, which you can use if maybe it will help you to increase, users or make your product more efficient. And also Azure actually have partnership with a big leading healthcare organization. Really often, in this case, you can use that. If you don't have any compliance, maybe you can choose any by price. So take it in mind and make some investigation about it based on product that you have. Okay, and next one, let's talk about cloud migration strategy. We have 4 the biggest one. They could be divided, they can be some subcategory, but it's for the biggest one, and we will go through them one by one. First one, it's shift and lift. It was very popular when cloud just appear. What it means? It means that you just take application from your server and move it as it is to the cloud. No changes, no specific services, just copy paste what we have. It's very quick. So if you're talking about the benefits, it's not here. Okay, if you're talking about benefits, it's much more quicker to move. It's not dependent on vendor, so you can, for example, go with Azure, then Azure increase prices. You can move to AWS. Of course, don't forget about price for migration, because you also need to pay for developer or DevOps, depend who you have to have this migration. Also, you don't need, actually, in most cases, you don't need a separate team or even maybe DevOps engineer only for part-time, because it does not need any specific knowledge. So general knowledge about the server will be enough. What else? It's very good strategy for legacy code, for example, or for small application. In this case, it's quick strategy to go. Next one is re-architecture. It's more, I would say, you will get more benefits from the cloud because you will use some specific services that cloud provide. And yeah. So first is reduce cost of ownership. In most cases, you can use some specific services, for example, serverless. So you pay only when you go. You don't need to pay for static server. Also, you can split your monolith to microservices, which will be much more easy to handle and manage. And it will be much more easy for you DevOps engineer. Next one is, in most cases, each vendor guarantee you 5 nines. It's called 5 nines because it's guarantee 99.999% of uptime. It means that they guarantee that server always will be up. But it could happen that there will be some issue with program itself. So, for example, developer push some wrong code. In case you will have microservice architecture or serverless architecture, not all of your application will be down, only some part of it. So, of course, it will be much better that have big monolith. Okay, and what next? It's up to scaling. So it's very easy to scale up and scale down. It's not going by default, so you need to configure it. Still, it's much more easier than without it. And for example, if you take Azure function, it's allows scaling without having even a provision for additional instance. So it's one of examples where we can use it. Okay, next one is hybrid cloud. I hope it's obvious. So we have some sensitive data locally because, for example, because of compliance or because of security, and maybe less sensitive to the cloud. So we will be less dependent on local environment. And if we are talking about hybrid cloud, it's very good option for big. Sorry, 1 minute. For big enterprise organization, they usually have already their own data center, but they don't want to. For example, they want to make a backups quickly or store backup more quickly and automatically. Also, with COVID, we become more independent. We become more independent, and they need to have some network for people who work remotely. And hybrid is very good work in this area. So let's maybe go one by one through the points of good and bad. So as I said, better support for remote workspace, improve scalability and control. So you can you not only depend on your location, and business continuity. So it means that you can ensure that even if you will have, for example, massive attack, you can quickly redirect some traffic to the cloud, so it will be scaled quickly. Of course, you need to make some action very quickly. On the other hand, at least your server, your application will not down. And improve security management. So you can choose which data have locally and which remotely. It also have some cons, and by it I mean hardware cost. So it will be more expensive for you. Maybe it's not only hardware; it's actually general the cost, because you don't need only pay for your local environment, you also need to pay for cloud, so your invoices will be increased. Next one is you can manage multiple vendors and platforms. To make it, actually, you can go with one or with multiple, but anyway, you need to manage both. Again, the same issue: local and remote, more management needed. The person who understands how local work and somebody who understands how your vendor services architecture work. And it could be lack of visibility or maybe more poor visibility. Your architecture become more complex, and to handle it, to understand where you can optimize, what is, maybe some services are old or some services take too much, I don't know, spaces or resources. To see these gaps, it will take much more time and manage the stuff more difficult than if you take only local or only remote. Okay, and greenfield strategy. It's the I would say maybe the most easiest, and people more often like this one just because it means that you go from the scratch, so you don't have yet nothing, and you create it by your, I don't know, previous experience or your preference, your investigation, and maybe you are not so depend on current structure. So let's go from again what is good in this area and what is bad. And the biggest good point is that, as I said, you create it from scratch, so you don't have you need not refactoring, think about how to make work all the application, new application architecture. Next one is you can clean state for software development. No consumption to work with the constraints of existing system and infrastructure, and there are no dependencies. So I think more or less obvious. What is the negative side? The most negative side is that there are so many different services, and sometimes to select one could be complicated. Because you don't have like previous data, which will say, so okay, we have this amount of users which will use our system, or any analytic about the previous app using, what is a bottleneck in the system, what is not bottleneck. So you need to decide, and you make you assume that it will work. So sometimes it can be good or bad choice. So it's also time consuming. And yeah, I think actually I talk about each one. Yeah, this was the main idea. Here are some examples of exist organization who already moved to the cloud. It's just for the biggest name. For example, Netflix use AWS, Capital One use Google Cloud, Dropbox is in AWS, and Spotify use AWS and Azure. So as you see, each of the clouds have been used from somebody. Maybe it's also part of some promotion campaign. Anyway, it's increased the trust of provider. And here I would like to share with you some case studies that we have. Maybe it will give you some ideas how to go for your case. So what we have e-commerce application with about 1 million users, and the requirements was that there will be 1,000 users per active users in a peak. Our goal was to move it to cloud, of course, make it secure, make it give quick response from the application, and so high availability. And what we done? we go with re-architecture strategy. We and the service, okay, and services that we use. Actually, let's go maybe one by one. Route 53, it's for routing. Cloud, for front end we have go with S3. There we had quite big discussion about should we move it to EC2 or S3. We decided that S3 with CloudFront will be much more faster and easier way for now. For backend, we use Fargate, and inside it have a lot of containers which have been managed. Some of the containers have been connected to ADS. It was actually MySQL database, but we have moved it to Postgres database. From new, also what we have connected, it's for search. On the old application, search was connected also to one database, MySQL database. We moved all the data to Elasticsearch. And we also use Elasticsearch for for logs from the server. And it was one of unexpected, I would say, resistance from a team. Developers who now on the port of, on the support from the application, we connect Kibana with Elasticsearch, and they really need time to adapt to this new system, and they didn't want to use it. They want use it as it before. So it's also take in mind that when you make some changes, not everybody accepts it from the beginning. So be prepared for it. And what else from specific from AWS we use is Amazon Personalize. It's for recommendation. Also, S3 was used. I forgot to mention. Also, S3 have been used for files, for product files, for images, and for logs, because we also connected CloudWatch, and some logs have came to S3 bucket, for example, SMS. So all the logs from SMS. For SMS, we connect SNS service, and logs came to S3 bucket as well. What else? It's work email also. We connected its service which specific belong to AWS. So it was our case. I forgot to mention why we select AWS from all the resources. There was no specific big difference in compliance. So, and we have more experience with AWS. So we checked the prices. Prices was the same, and as we have more experience with it, we go with that. And not big, not some some specific. What next? So it's what we decide to go, and we have few phases during actually the migration phase. So after we made the preparation, investigation, we check the prices. Of course, we made the testing, and it's really important. It's also one of the learning, I would say, point which we get from it. So don't forget about test and really spend time on it. So load testing, of course, security testing, and check all your data from CloudWatch. It provides very good analytic for you. From migration, so actually migration. So when we test, okay, everything fine. We create we created 3 stages. It was prod, pre-prod, and stage. Stage was the most easy from the architecture point. It use EC2 and S3. So most of the services was not used for staging. And when we moved to production, the biggest challenge was transfer the data. So database was quite big. It was about 50 gigabytes, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, 50 gigabytes. And it took time, and especially one more challenge that we had is that when we transfer the data, we need to be released right away. So we didn't have actually chance for mistake. We didn't switch from one server to another in one day, we temporarily connect the service which part of the user moved to old server, part to the new server. The exception was the database. We use the same database for both. This was our step to reduce risk, and we will not be so stressful in first couple days while users use the application. So it was good case because we not really feel the migration, at least from feedback. And the last step, and I really recommend you don't forget, make imitate recovery plan, because something could be broken and you need to quickly take your backups, or update your backups, change the data, don't set up one more server. So when you make your planning, think about what could happen and try to do it in real time, just to see what issues you can have and how you will react. You really need to get planned for it. But if it will never happen, that it happened and your users will not get access to the application for some time. And conclusion, what we learned, I'm a little bit already mentioned about it. So we were not expected that team will get resistant. The team will not accept new tools, and we need a dedicated person who first time manage them, support them. It was not too easy. Other one is not stay on shift and lift. Maybe it's not from this case. It was from our first case when we just move application as it is, and customer just didn't really feel why it's needed. So better to use some services which allow him to maybe increase speed or decrease cost, or maybe some services that help with security, compliance, and so on, which provided by vendors. So your customer will be satisfied with the result. And what else? And I also added for my list is always add extra time for testing. It's always happened that you don't forget about it, but you don't calculate. So add it to the risk. Say your customer, or if you are customers, then take it into the mind that you will need more time usually than that have been planned. I think that's what I wanted to share with you. I see there are some comments, so let me check what we have here. What are some potential pitfalls to be aware of when migration to the cloud? It's really depends on location. What recommend to healthcare industry? Cloud solutions that I recommend to healthcare industry is, I would say, Azure. They have more services. It's so the question is, what cloud solutions you recommended for healthcare industry? I would recommend to check between AWS and Azure, as I mentioned. From what I see, Azure very often provides some personal discount, and actually that's why, except the services that they use and have, it's also like cost efficient. So connect to support. I think you can get some feedbacks. And other question was, what potential pitfalls to be aware? In most cases, it's compliance, and it's really depends what exactly product you have, because if you go with AWS or Azure, there actually shouldn't be any issue. I know that with Firebase we had the issue when actually I don't know if Firebase is counted as cloud. Actually, I think yes. So with Firebase, not all the services are are supported, at least HIPPO. With GDPR, I haven't checked. What else? Database structure. I'm not sure what you have now, but if you will split it to microservices, it could be issue, and networking. So you need to translate data from subnets. You need to create right subnets, like private subnets and public subnets. This is what from my experience the most critical. I just think what else? Not sure. About else, need to check more deeper. Telehealth. Telehealth. Yeah, anyway, I think like to investigate more deeper, I need maybe more information. I think telehealth have same complaints as other like medical storing data applications. So subnets database and check that cloud have all the certificates. Okay, and yeah, actually this is information about myself, so I will be really glad sorry, if you will follow me on the LinkedIn and will join our group. Last time somebody asked me to create a list of cost optimization, just to go one by one. So we will publish it soon, and we'll also post announce on our LinkedIn group, as well as next topic. Actually, next topic I want to talk about architecture for healthcare organization. I want to prepare some example from our experience, maybe one or two, and so it's maybe also will be interesting. Sorry, I'm not sure the name, KN. Maybe it will be also interesting for you to join. So I will share with my experience, maybe more deep service by service. Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening, and see you in 2 weeks.